The Spear of Destiny. In the dim vaults beneath Nuremberg Castle during the final months of the Third Reich, American forces discovered an object that would quietly vanish into classified archives. The Spear of Destiny, also known as the Holy Lance. This ancient relic, an iron spearhead with a nail purportedly from Christ's crucifixion bound into its blade, had obsessed Adolf Hitler since his impoverished Vienna days. According to eyewitness accounts from those close to the Führer's inner circle, Hitler first encountered the spear in the Hofburg treasury in 1912, standing transfixed before it for hours, convinced it channeled invincible power to whoever possessed it. Historians dismiss this as youthful fantasy, yet the pattern is undeniable. When Nazi troops marched into Austria in 1938, one of the very first orders issued was to seize the spear from Vienna and transport it under heavy guard to Nuremberg. The spear's documented history stretches back to the early Middle Ages, passed between emperors who claimed it granted divine right to rule. Charlemagne carried it into battle. Frederick Barbarossa drowned clutching it. 38 emperors allegedly wielded its power. By the 20th century, occult circles whispered that the spear was far older, forged in meteoric iron and imbued with energies beyond human comprehension. Heinrich Himmler, architect of the SS, reportedly commissioned metallurgical tests that revealed anomalous properties, traces of alloys not matching any known ancient technique. These reports, stamped with Reichsforschungsanstalt markings, disappeared after 1945. When General George Patton's Third Army liberated Nuremberg in April 1945, the spear was recovered from a hidden vault beneath the castle, wrapped in black silk and guarded by SS officers who chose suicide over surrender. Patton, a man steeped in reincarnation beliefs and esoteric study, recognized its significance immediately. Declassified memos show he delayed its transfer, for weeks consulting occult experts before reluctantly handing it over to Allied command. Official records claim it was returned to Vienna in 1946, yet persistent leaks from former OSS officers suggest otherwise. The Hofburg spear on public display today is a meticulous replica, while the original, showing microscopic etchings invisible to the naked eye, was diverted to a secure facility in the United States. Whistleblowers from Project Paperclip, the program that absorbed Nazi scientists, have claimed the spear underwent intensive study at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, alongside other confiscated anomalies. Photographs allegedly showing the spear under ultraviolet light reveal symbols that match pre-Christian Germanic runes, suggesting it was modified centuries before the crucifixion story emerged. Why has no modern spectroscopic analysis of the public Hofburg spear ever been permitted? Austrian authorities cite preservation concerns, but documents obtained through Freedom of Information requests reveal American pressure behind the scenes. The spear's influence on Hitler himself remains one of the most suppressed aspects. Close aides reported that during critical wartime decisions, blitzkrieg planning, the invasion of Russia, Hitler would retreat to private chambers with the relic, emerging pale and resolute. After its loss in 1945, his decline accelerated dramatically. Coincidence? Perhaps. Yet the pattern repeats. Every leader documented as possessing the authentic spear eventually met violent or mysterious ends. Today, wherever the true lance resides, its location is guarded with security rivaling nuclear assets. The question lingers: if this object is merely medieval superstition, why does every nation that briefly held it after 1945 refuse to discuss its chain of custody? The Spear of Destiny was not merely confiscated, it was silenced. Maria Orsic's Vril Pendant, deep within the confiscated crates marked with SS runes and transported under armed guard from Berlin's crumbling Reich Chancellery in the spring of 1945, Allied intelligence officers uncovered a small silver pendant that would quickly be classified above top secret. This innocuous-looking object, no larger than a man's palm, consisted of intricately etched platinum overlaid on blackened silver, depicting a stylized female figure with impossibly long flowing hair, entwined with geometric symbols resembling both ancient Sumerian cuneiform and futuristic circuit-like patterns. According to intercepted Ahnenerbe documents, the pendant belonged to Maria Orsic, the enigmatic medium and leader of the Vril Gesellschaft, a secretive all-female occult society that operated in the shadows of the Vril Society during the 1920s and 1930s. Orsic claimed the design had been psychically transmitted to her from entities on a planet orbiting the star Aldebaran in the Taurus constellation, beings who allegedly guided humanity's distant Aryan ancestors. The pendant's documented chain of custody begins in Munich, where Orsic and her circle, including prominent figures like Sigrun and Traude, conducted seances in dimly lit apartments, producing detailed technical schematics for disc-shaped aircraft powered by a mysterious force they called Vril energy. Eyewitness accounts from defected Thule members describe Orsic wearing the pendant during these sessions, entering trance states where her hair reportedly levitated, and the object emitted a faint violet glow. Metallurgical analysis conducted covertly by Reichsforschungsanstalt scientists in 1943 revealed the pendant contained trace elements of iridium and osmium in ratios not found in terrestrial deposits, suggesting extraterrestrial or pre-industrial origin. Himmler, obsessed with harnessing this supposed interstellar knowledge for the war effort, ordered the pendant seized from Orsic in 1944 after she reportedly refused to fully cooperate with military applications, fearing the technology would be weaponized prematurely. By early 1945, the pendant resided in a reinforced vault beneath Wewelsburg Castle, alongside other prized occult acquisitions, catalogued under the code Vril Primor. When American forces overran the region, the castle's SS curator attempted to destroy sensitive materials, but the pendant, wrapped in red silk, embroidered with black sun symbols, was recovered intact from a hidden compartment. OSS reports declassified decades later hint at immediate anomalies. Photographic film, exposed near the object, developed unexplained fogging, and several handlers reported vivid dreams of star systems and anti-gravity propulsion. General Patton's staff, already familiar with esoteric relics from the Spear of Destiny recovery, flagged it for immediate transfer to Fort Hunt in Virginia, where Project Paperclip scientists awaited. Post-war interrogations of surviving Vril members yielded conflicting stories. Some claimed the pendant was merely symbolic. Others insisted it functioned as a psychic amplifier capable of bridging dimensions. One particularly chilling testimony from a former medium named Hiki suggested that during a 1943 session, the pendant facilitated direct contact with non-human intelligences that warned of Germany's impending defeat unless certain rituals were performed. These rituals allegedly involved blood ceremonies at Wewelsburg's North Tower, though no physical evidence survived the castle's partial destruction. What is certain is that after 1946, all references to the pendant vanish from public records. Freedom of Information Act requests filed in the 1980s for Vril Gesellschaft artifacts were met with standard denials citing national security, while leaked CIA memos from the MK Ultra era reference experiments with psychotronic devices of possible extraterrestrial derivation that match the pendant's description exactly. Today, persistent rumors among former intelligence operatives place the pendant in a secure underground facility at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, occasionally removed for study, alongside reverse-engineered aerospace components. Independent researchers attempting to locate surviving Vril documents in Bavarian archives have encountered systematic gaps, entire folders redacted or missing. The pendant's etchings, when compared to modern quantum computing diagrams, show startling similarities to theoretical zero-point energy extraction patterns, raising uncomfortable questions about the true origins of certain post-war technological leaps. If this object was merely the delusional creation of wartime mystics, why has every government that handled it maintained absolute silence for over 80 years? The Maria Orsic Vril pendant was not simply confiscated. It was buried beneath layers of classification designed to ensure its secrets remain forever, beyond public reach. The Ahnenerbe crystal skull. Among the most tightly guarded crates evacuated from Wewelsburg Castle in the chaotic final weeks of April 1945 was a reinforced lead-lined case containing a life-sized human skull carved from a single block of flawless quartz crystal. This object, catalogued in Heinrich Himmler's private Ahnenerbe inventory as Schädel Primus, had been acquired during the 1938-1939 German expedition to Tibet, led by Ernst Schäfer, a zoologist and SS officer. whose official mission masked deeper esoteric objectives. Declassified fragments of Schaefer's personal journals, obtained through persistent archival requests in Munich, reveal that the skull was discovered in a hidden chamber beneath a remote monastery near Lhasa, wrapped in faded silk, bearing reverse swastikas, and guarded by monks who warned of its mind-opening peril. The expedition's occult overseers, reporting directly to Himmler, overrode local objections and transported the artifact back to Germany under diplomatic cover, alongside other Tibetan relics, including prayer wheels and alleged Atlantean manuscripts. The skull's physical properties immediately drew intense scrutiny from Reichsforschungsanstalt scientists. Weighing approximately 11 pounds and measuring anatomically perfect proportions, it exhibited optical anomalies unmatched by any known quartz deposit. Internal inclusions forming fractal patterns that shifted under polarized light, creating the illusion of moving constellations. Early tests conducted in 1940 at a secure facility near Peenemünde revealed piezoelectric effects far exceeding theoretical limits. When exposed to specific sound frequencies, the skull emitted harmonic resonances that interfered with nearby electronic equipment, causing vacuum tubes to glow without power input. Himmler, convinced it represented a surviving artifact from a pre-Aryan master race, ordered its installation in Wewelsburg's Valhalla chamber, where SS initiates reportedly meditated before it during initiation rites, claiming enhanced clairvoyant abilities and vivid visions of ancient Hyperborean civilizations. Eyewitness accounts from surviving castle staff describe Himmler spending hours alone with the skull, often emerging with detailed strategic insights that defied conventional intelligence. One particularly disturbing report, buried in a 1944 Ahnenerbe memorandum, documents an experiment where the skull was placed in contact with a dying concentration camp prisoner. The man allegedly regained consciousness briefly, speaking in an unknown guttural language before expiring. These sessions coincided with intensified SS research into psychotronic weaponry, suggesting the skull served as more than mere symbolism. When American forces approached Wewelsburg in April 1945, SS custodians attempted evacuation, but the lead case was abandoned in a subterranean passage and recovered by the 2nd Armored Division alongside other occult materials. Initial Allied examination at Fort Hunt revealed immediate concerns. Photographic plates exposed near the skull developed unexplained human-like silhouettes, while several GIs handling it reported severe migraines and recurring nightmares of subterranean cities. The object was quickly transferred to a joint OSS Army intelligence facility in Maryland, where it underwent classified study alongside the Spear of Destiny and Vril Pendant. Declassified project paperclip files contain oblique references to crystalline psychotronic artifact TK-7, describing experiments involving focused intention that produced measurable electromagnetic fields. One redacted report from 1947 mentions a successful remote viewing session targeting Soviet installations, with the skull positioned centrally, results deemed too sensitive for wider dissemination. Post-war attempts to trace the skull's provenance hit deliberate dead ends. Tibetan sources interviewed in the 1950s by CIA assets consistently described a singing skull of great danger, removed by men with sun wheels, while modern spectroscopic analysis of similar quartz artifacts shows none matching the confiscated specimen's purity. Freedom of Information requests filed since the 1970s for Ahnenerbe crystal artifacts uniformly returned denials, citing ongoing national security classification, despite the Cold War's end. Persistent rumors among former Wright-Patterson personnel place the skull in a climate-controlled vault alongside alleged extraterrestrial materials, occasionally consulted during early remote viewing programs like Stargate. Independent researchers comparing the skull's described internal patterns to modern holographic data storage techniques note eerie parallels, structures capable of holding vast information densities if properly stimulated. Why has no public institution ever acknowledged possessing such an object when lesser Tibetan relics from the same expedition reside openly in Berlin museums? The Ahnenerbe crystal skull was not merely confiscated, it was removed from historical discourse entirely. Its potential to alter human consciousness deemed too destabilizing for an unprepared world. Wherever it resides today, under whatever code name, its silence speaks volumes about the true priorities of post-war intelligence communities. Himmler's Black Sun Medallion. In the blackened ruins of Wewelsburg Castle's North Tower, where the SS had constructed their ceremonial heart of the Reich, American troops in April 1945 uncovered a small obsidian medallion embedded in the floor of the Obergruppenführersaal, directly beneath the 12-spoked Black Sun mosaic that dominated the chamber's marble expanse. This object, no larger than a silver dollar, yet weighing unnaturally heavy for its size, featured the identical 12-rayed sigil, inlaid with threads of pure gold that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Heinrich Himmler's personal diaries, fragments of which survived in private collections despite official destruction orders, repeatedly referenced the medallion as Der Schwarze Sonnenkern, the Black Sun Core, claiming it was recovered during a 1936 Ahnenerbe expedition to the Externstein rock formation in Westphalia, a site long revered in Germanic pagan tradition as a solar observatory predating Stonehenge. According to intercepted Ahnenerbe correspondence, the medallion was unearthed from a sealed stone casket beneath the Externstein's central pillar, accompanied by runic inscriptions warning of its use only by those of unbroken blood memory. Carbon dating attempts in the late 1930s by Reichsforschungsanstalt metallurgists yielded impossible results. The obsidian matrix registered anomalies suggesting exposure to extreme temperatures inconsistent with any known volcanic formation, while the gold filaments contained trace isotopes matching no terrestrial mine. Himmler, guided by his personal mystic Karl Maria Viligut, interpreted the 12 spokes as representing the 12 knightly archetypes of a renewed Teutonic order, and ordered the Wewelsburg mosaic designed around the medallion's exact proportions. SS architects confirmed in post-war interrogations that the castle's entire layout, the circular Valhalla chamber, the crypt below, was aligned to channel geomagnetic forces toward the medallion when placed at the mosaic's center during solstice rituals. Eyewitness accounts from Wewelsburg's surviving staff describe high-ranking SS officers gathering in the hall at winter solstice, where Himmler would wear the medallion on a silver chain against his bare chest during hours-long ceremonies involving chanting in reconstructed Proto-Germanic. Participants reportedly experienced altered states, collective visions of a radiant inner sun illuminating subterranean realms, accompanied by measurable drops in ambient temperature and compass deviations of up to 30 degrees. One particularly disturbing memorandum, recovered from a hidden safe in Himmler's office, documents a 1943 ritual where the medallion allegedly induced a temporary cessation of heartbeat in 3 initiates, who later described out-of-body journeys to a domain of black light before being revived. These sessions intensified as the war turned against Germany, with Himmler increasingly desperate to harness what he believed was the medallion's ability to draw upon telluric currents for strategic foresight. When Allied forces reached Wewelsburg, SS custodians had pried the medallion from its floor setting in a failed evacuation attempt, leaving only the empty socket in the mosaic, a void still visible today beneath protective glass. The object itself was discovered wrapped in black velvet inside a lead-lined box marked with the SS runes SS Igentum, abandoned in a subterranean vault alongside cryptographic materials. Initial handling by American intelligence officers triggered immediate classification. Photographic film exposed in the same room developed with radial burn patterns emanating from the medallion's position, while several soldiers reported persistent auditory phenomena, low-frequency humming that continued for days after contact. The medallion was swiftly transferred to the same Maryland facility, housing the Spear of Destiny and Vril Pendant, catalogued under the cryptic designation Geomantic Device HS-12. Post-war project paperclip scientists, including former Ahnenerbe researchers absorbed into American programs, conducted clandestine experiments revealing the medallion's interaction with human bioelectric fields. When held by subjects under EEG monitoring, it produced synchronized brainwave patterns across multiple participants, even at distances of several meters. Declassified fragments from early CIA artichoke programs reference the medallion in connection with attempts to induce remote influence. results deemed too unpredictable for operational use, yet too valuable to destroy. Freedom of Information requests targeting Wewelsburg, Black Sun artifacts consistently return denials, citing classification that persists into the present day, despite the passage of decades. Independent geomagnetic surveys of the Externstein site in the 1980s detected persistent anomalies directly beneath the excavation point, an inverted magnetic field that defies conventional explanation. When compared to modern toroidal energy research, the Medallion's 12-spoke design mirrors theoretical models of zero-point field extraction, raising questions about whether certain post-war breakthroughs in electromagnetic propulsion drew inspiration from its study. Why does the German government refuse high-resolution imaging of the empty mosaic socket, citing structural concerns that independent engineers dismiss? The Himmler Black Sun medallion was not merely confiscated, it was severed from its ritual context and buried within classified archives. Its potential to manipulate collective consciousness, considered too dangerous for any public acknowledgement. Wherever it resides today, under perpetual guard, its darkness continues to eclipse official history. The Vajra Thunderbolt of Shambhala. Recovered from a locked steel cabinet in Heinrich Himmler's private quarters at Wewelsburg Castle during the American advance in April 1945, this bronze dorje, a ritual thunderbolt scepter central to Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism, stood out immediately for its anomalous construction and the frantic efforts made to conceal it. The object, approximately 9 inches long, with 8 prongs emerging from a central sphere, was cast in an alloy that preliminary field tests identified as containing high percentages of meteoric iron, a material revered in ancient Tibetan texts as sky metal, capable of conducting energies beyond physical explanation. According to declassified Ahnenerbe expeditions reports from the 1938-1939 Schaefer mission to Tibet, the dorje was presented as a diplomatic gift by a high lama in Lhasa, who warned that it had once belonged to Padmasambhava himself. The 8th century master, credited with concealing terma, hidden teachings, across the Himalayas, including gateways to the subterranean kingdom of Agartha or Shambhala. The lama's accompanying oral tradition, transcribed by SS interpreter Bruno Beger, claimed the dorje had been recovered from a sealed cave in the Tsangpo Gorge region, a location corresponding to ancient Bon texts describing entrances to inner earth realms inhabited by advanced beings who guarded humanity's destiny. Himmler, already obsessed with polar and subterranean theories through Karl Maria Willigut's Irminist visions, interpreted the object as tangible proof of a hidden Aryan homeland beneath the Himalayas, connected energetically to the Antarctic bases his navy was simultaneously exploring. Reichsforschungsanstalt physicists assigned to Wewelsburg in 1941 subjected the dorje to rigorous examination, discovering that when struck with specific mallet frequencies recorded from Tibetan monastic rituals, it produced standing acoustic waves that caused nearby quartz crystals to fracture along unnatural geometric planes, while compasses in the chamber spun erratically for minutes afterward. SS ritual protocols, fragments of which survived in captured orderly notebooks, described the dorje's central role in private ceremonies conducted in Wewelsburg's crypt during equinox periods. Himmler and select Obergruppenführer would arrange themselves in a mandala pattern around the object, while intoning reconstructed Germanic-Tibetan hybrid mantras, reportedly inducing shared visionary states of vast underground halls lit by perpetual blue light and populated by tall, fair-haired figures wearing garments adorned with reversed swastikas. One particularly detailed account from a surviving adjutant describes a 1942 session where the dorje allegedly levitated several inches above its silk cushion, emitting a low-frequency vibration felt in the bones rather than heard, after which Himmler emerged convinced of an imminent German victory guided by subterranean allies. These rituals intensified in 1944 as Allied bombing campaigns escalated, with the dorje positioned alongside the Black Sun medallion in attempts to establish psychic contact with alleged Antarctic outposts. When American troops secured Wewelsburg, the dorje was found wrapped in yellow silk bearing faded Sanskrit syllables, hidden behind a false panel in Himmler's desk, alongside coded maps referencing Basis 211 in Antarctica. Initial handling triggered immediate security protocols. Several soldiers reported intense vertigo and auditory hallucinations of distant bells, while photographic equipment malfunctioned with double exposures showing blurred humanoid silhouettes. The object was rapidly crated with the other esoteric items and routed to the Maryland Intelligence Facility, where Project Paperclip scientists, including former Ahnenerbe members, conducted experiments correlating its acoustic properties with early radar deflection research. Declassified fragments. From 1947, technical reports describe successful generation of localized electromagnetic null zones when the dorje was vibrated at precise harmonics, phenomena that reportedly influenced subsequent stealth technology development, yet were buried under highest classification. Post-war attempts to trace similar dorjes in museum collections reveal none matching the confiscated specimen's alloy composition or prong symmetry. While Tibetan exiles interviewed by Western researchers in the 1950s consistently referenced a dangerous sky metal Vajra removed by the Iron Men with sun wheels, warning it could destabilize earthly and subterranean balances if misused, Freedom of Information requests targeting Tibetan ritual objects Schaefer expedition uniformly encounter redactions, citing enduring national security concerns, despite the geopolitical shifts of the intervening decades. Independent acoustic studies of comparable bronze dorjes show none replicating the confiscated objects' resonant anomalies, which align disturbingly with modern research into scalar wave propagation. Why have Tibetan authorities never publicly demanded repatriation of this specific artifact when lesser items from the same expedition have been returned? Persistent intelligence community rumors place the dorjo in a secure vault at Wright-Patterson or a successor facility, occasionally consulted during Cold War remote sensing programs that yielded unexplained successes against Soviet targets. The Vajra Thunderbolt of Shambhala was not merely confiscated, it was isolated from its cultural and energetic context. Its potential to bridge worlds considered too volatile for any regime to acknowledge openly. In the silence surrounding its current location, the echoes of its forbidden resonance continue to reverberate through classified corridors. The Lapis Exillis from Montségur, hidden among the personal effects of SS Obersturmführer Otto Rahn, recovered from a sealed safe in the ruins of Berlin's SS headquarters in May 1945, was a palm-sized irregular stone of translucent green jasper, veined with threads of gold that caught light in ways no natural mineral should. Rahn, the young archaeologist whose books on the Cathars had caught Himmler's attention in the early 1930s, had been tasked with locating the Holy Grail in the Languedoc region of southern France, specifically the ruins of Montségur, last stronghold of the Cathar Perfectae, before their annihilation in 1244. According to captured Ahnenerbe field reports, Rahn's 1937 expedition, conducted under cover of scholarly research, uncovered the stone in a concealed cavity beneath the Pog of Montségur during a clandestine nighttime excavation, guided by local legends that spoke of a sacred object spirited away moments before the fortress fell. The stone, which Rahn privately called the Lapis Exillis, the stone exiled from heaven, referenced in Wolfram von Eschenbach's Parzival, was described in his coded notebooks as having fallen from Lucifer's crown during his rebellion, later entrusted to the Cathars as guardian of pure Gnostic truth. Preliminary examination by Ahnenerbe mineralogists in 1938 revealed properties that defied contemporary science. The jasper exhibited persistent low-level luminescence in complete darkness, visible only after prolonged exposure to starlight, and its gold inclusions formed patterns that align precisely with the constellation's Corona Borealis when viewed through polarized lenses. Rahn claimed an encrypted correspondence with Karl Maria Viligut that prolonged meditation upon the stone induced visions of a radiant castle in the Pyrenees guarded by invisible knights. Visions that grew increasingly vivid during his final months before his mysterious death by exposure in the Tyrolean Alps in March 1939. Himmler, treating Rahn's suicide with suspicion and ordering his papers sealed, transferred the stone to Wewelsburg's Valhalla chamber, where it was positioned at the center of the Black Sun mosaic during certain high ceremonies. Surviving SS initiates interrogated after the war described the stone being placed upon a black silk cloth, while 12 Obergruppenführer encircled it, chanting passages from Parzival in Middle High German. Several reported shared perceptual anomalies, auditory phenomena resembling distant choral singing in Occitan, accompanied by sudden temperature increases localized around the stone itself. One particularly guarded memorandum from 1942 documents an experiment where the stone was brought into proximity with the Ahnenerbe crystal skull. Both objects allegedly began resonating in harmonic sympathy, producing visible standing waves and incense smoke that formed fleeting geometric mandalas before dissipating. When American intelligence raided the Berlin SS complex in May 1945, Ron's safe, bearing his personal rune signature, was pried open to reveal the stone wrapped in a fragment of yellowed Cathar parchment inscribed with the Consolamentum prayer. Initial handling triggered immediate classification protocols. Photographic plates exposed near the object developed unexplained emerald flares, while several officers reported persistent phosphine patterns in their peripheral vision for weeks afterward. The stone was routed through the same channels as the Spear of Destiny and Vril Pendant, arriving at the Maryland facility where Project Paperclip scientists conducted controlled luminescent studies. Declassified fragments from 1948 reports describe successful induction of altered states in test subjects through focused gazing, with EEG readings showing synchronized theta wave dominance across groups even when separated by walls. Results that quietly informed early CIA behavioral modification research yet were buried under permanent seal. Post-war attempts to locate comparable jaspers from Montségur yield nothing matching the confiscated specimen's isotopic signature, which independent analysts have noted bears similarity to certain tektites formed under extreme cosmic conditions. French authorities, when queried about Ron's excavations in the 1950s, produced only sanitized permits for surface surveys, while local Cathar revivalist groups insist the true Lapis Exillis was removed by men in black uniforms and has never been returned. Freedom of Information requests targeting Montségur archaeological recoveries 1937-1939 consistently encounter redactions citing Franco-German diplomatic sensitivities that persist decades after both regimes collapse. Contemporary optical research into photonic crystals reveals structures eerily similar to the stone's internal veining, capable of manipulating light at quantum scales. Advances whose classified origins remain obscured. Why has no mainstream historian ever been granted access to Ron's original field notes when lesser Ahnenerbe documents fill public archives? Persistent whispers among former intelligence personnel place the Lapis Exillis in the same restricted vault as the crystal skull, occasionally removed for study in programs exploring consciousness, expansion technologies too sensitive for declassification. The Lapis Exillis from Montségur was not merely confiscated, it was excised from the Grail legend itself, its capacity to awaken forbidden perception, deemed too subversive for a world still recovering from the very ideology that sought to wield it. In its enforced silence, the stone continues to cast an emerald shadow across official narratives. The Saami rune drum of eternal cycles, secured in a locked archival crate within the collapsed SS Ahnenerbe headquarters in Berlin's Dahlem district during the Soviet advance in May 1945, though swiftly transferred to Western hands through clandestine intelligence channels, was a large Saami shaman drum, whose reindeer skin membrane bore markings that defied every attempt at conventional ethnographic classification. This object, a classic Nordic lapis drum, approximately 60 centimeters across with a distinctive Y-shaped handle carved from birch, had been seized during the 1939 Ahnenerbe expedition to Finnish Lapland, led by Yrjö von Grönhagen, a Finnish musicologist recruited by Wolfram Sievers to document ancient Germanic Nordic magical practices surviving among the indigenous Saami population. Official expedition reports, heavily redacted in post-war German archives, describe the drum being forcibly removed from a remote Sida near Lake Inari after its Noaidi shaman refused. Voluntary surrender, claiming it was the voice of the sun's eternal turning, passed down since the time when stars walked upon the ice. The drum's membrane, stretched taut over a pine bowl and painted with red alderbark pigment, displayed an intricate cosmological map. A central sun wheel composed of 12 radiating arms, forming a clear counterclockwise swastika, the Saami symbol for thunder and renewal, surrounded by concentric rings depicting the three worlds of Saami mythology, complete with figures of horned deities, reindeer migrations, and subterranean serpent beings that bore striking resemblance to Germanic Jörmungandr motifs. Ahnenerbe runologists assigned to the expedition noted additional micro-etched symbols invisible to the naked eye until viewed under oblique light. Runic sequences matching reconstructed Armanen Futhark proposed by Guido von List, sequences that predated known Saami contact with Germanic settlers by centuries. Reichsforschungsanstalt. Acousticians in 1941 subjected the drum to controlled percussion tests using traditional sinew mallets, recording harmonic overtones that persisted long after striking ceased, creating standing waves capable of vibrating loose particles into perfect geometric patterns on nearby surfaces. Himmler, informed of the findings through sievers, ordered the drum transported to Wewelsburg's crypt for integration into seasonal rituals, aligning with the summer solstice. Surviving SS ritual protocols, pieced together from captured orderly logs, describe high-ranking officers forming a circle around the drum, while a designated percussionist, often a former Ahnenerbe field researcher, performed specific rhythmic patterns derived from Saami Joik melodies, transcribed during the expedition. Participants reportedly entered collective trance states characterized by visions of endless polar daylight illuminating vast underground halls where ancient Aryan progenitors instructed them in forgotten runic sciences. One particularly sensitive 1943 memorandum details a ceremony where the drum's resonance allegedly caused temporary magnetic field disruptions throughout the castle, rendering compasses useless and inducing synchronized pulse rate changes among the 12 assembled officers, after which Himmler claimed direct communication with the ancestral current beneath the ice. As Allied bombing intensified in 1944, the drum was relocated to Berlin for safekeeping in the Ahnenerbe's fortified archive, catalogued under the designation Nordische Runentrommel L39. When Soviet troops overran the facility, the crate containing the drum was among materials hastily segregated by arriving American OSS teams under Operation Paperclip protocols, routed westward before full Soviet consolidation. Initial handling by intelligence personnel triggered immediate anomalies. Several officers reported persistent auditory phenomena, low rhythmic pulsing heard only in silence, continuing for days. And photographic film stored nearby developed circular interference patterns matching the drum's sun wheel exactly. The object joined the growing collection at the Maryland facility, where early CIA precursor teams conducted experiments correlating its acoustic properties with emerging psychophysiological research, noting measurable entrainment of brainwave patterns in subjects exposed to recorded playbacks. Declassified fragments from 1949 technical evaluations describe successful induction of heightened suggestibility, states when the drum's rhythms were combined with controlled lighting mimicking polar conditions, results quietly folded into behavioral modification programs, yet sealed indefinitely. Freedom of Information requests targeting Ahnenerbe Lapland ethnographic recoveries, consistently return partial releases omitting any reference to this specific drum, while Finnish and Norwegian Saami cultural repatriation efforts since the 1970s have recovered lesser examples, but never the one bearing the anomalous Armanen overlays. Contemporary acoustic archaeology studies of surviving Saami drums reveal none capable of sustaining the prolonged harmonic nodes documented in the confiscated specimen, nodes that align disturbingly with modern research into infrasound entrainment and collective consciousness phenomena. Why have Scandinavian authorities never acknowledged the existence of this particular drum when publicly discussing Ahnenerbe thefts, while simultaneously displaying returned artifacts in national museums? Persistent accounts from retired intelligence analysts place the Saami rune drum of eternal cycles alongside the crystal skull and black sun medallion in restricted storage, occasionally consulted during Cold War experiments exploring non-chemical methods of psychological influence. The drum was not merely confiscated, it was silenced, its rhythmic voice deemed capable of awakening ancestral memories, too destabilizing for any post-war order to tolerate. In the enforced quiet surrounding its fate, the beat of forgotten cycles continues to echo through classified silence. The Icelandic Völuspá prophecy Vellum, unearthed from a concealed lead-lined canister in the Ahnenerbe's Reykjavik field office during the chaotic British occupation of Iceland in May 1945, and rapidly evacuated by American OSS operatives before full Allied coordination, was a rolled vellum sheet measuring roughly 40 by 60 centimeters, inscribed in meticulous Old Norse runes that glowed faintly under moonlight, according to the Icelandic scholar who reluctantly surrendered it. This document, acquired during the 1938 Ahnenerbe expedition to Iceland, headed by Bruno Schweitzer, a linguist tasked with documenting surviving Eddaic traditions and locating pre-Christian manuscripts that might validate Germanic racial continuity to Hyperborean origins, had been obtained through a combination of scholarly persuasion and veiled intimidation from a remote farmstead near Húsavík. The elderly custodian, a descendant of medieval skaldic lines, described it as the forbidden continuation of the seeress's vision, allegedly copied in the 14th century from an earlier skin hidden in a glacial cave since the time of Snorri Sturluson, containing stanzas omitted from all known Völuspá recensions because they foretold events beyond the current turning of the world wheel. The vellum itself, tanned from an unidentified animal hide that carbon testing attempted in 1940 yielded inconclusive results suggesting anomalous preservation, bore 68 additional stanzas following the standard prophecy of Ragnarok, written in a variant futhark incorporating symbols not found in any attested runic alphabet, characters that Ahnenerbe cryptographers linked to Guido von List's Armanen-System despite the chronological impossibility. The text described a second twilight of the gods occurring in an age of iron birds and fire from the earth's bowels, where a one-eyed leader marked by the sun wheel would briefly wield the ring of world power before a cataclysm involving ice from both poles melting into steaming oceans, followed by the emergence of a new land from the sea bearing tall, fair ones from beneath. Himmler, upon receiving Schweitzer's preliminary translation in 1939, ordered the vellum transported to Wewelsburg under highest security, convinced it constituted direct prophetic validation of the Reich's thousand-year destiny and the necessity of Antarctic and polar expeditions. Reich's Forschungsanstalt, philologists, and occult specialists assigned to the castle subjected the document to exhaustive analysis, discovering that when exposed to ultraviolet light sourced from quartz lamps, calibrated to northern auroral frequencies, the additional runes revealed secondary micro-inscriptions forming a layered prophecy that shifted depending on viewing angle, details including precise descriptions of mechanical flight, subterranean bases, and a final conflict involving men from the stars returning to claim their inheritance. During select solstice ceremonies in the Obergruppenführersaal, the vellum was unrolled upon the Black Sun mosaic, while SS initiates recited the standard Völuspá stanzas aloud. Surviving testimonies from interrogated officers describe collective visionary experiences where the additional text seemed to animate, with runic letters rearranging themselves to form personalized warnings or encouragements aligned with each participant's bloodline memory. One particularly guarded 1944 protocol records a session where the vellum allegedly emitted a low tonal resonance matching recorded Icelandic Rimur chants, causing candle flames to bend inward and several officers to simultaneously envision a post-war world dominated by eagle and bear divided by ice curtains, after which strategic decisions regarding the Arctic front were reportedly adjusted. As defeat loomed in early 1945, the vellum was evacuated from Wewelsburg to Berlin and then to the Icelandic field cache for potential submarine transfer to Antarctic Base 2 and 11, but British forces occupying the island secured the office before completion. American intelligence, alerted by decoded Enigma traffic referencing Nordische Prophezeiung Schier 38, intercepted the canister during material consolidation and routed it through the same clandestine pipeline as the Crystal Skull and Vajra. Initial examination triggered immediate high-level classification. Photographic attempts produced double images with the secondary runes prominently visible despite not being seen by naked eye, while several analysts reported persistent auditory hallucinations of female chanting in Old Norse lasting weeks. The document joined the restricted Maryland collection, where early Cold War psychological operations teams explored its potential for predictive modeling, noting that certain stanzas, when translated with post-war geopolitical knowledge, appeared to describe nuclear detonation effects and space race milestones with unsettling precision. Declassified fragments from 1950s technical assessments describe experiments combining the Vellum's exposure with strobe lighting calibrated to auroral frequencies, producing measurable shifts in subject precognitive test scores that quietly influenced remote viewing protocol development, yet remain buried under permanent seal. Freedom of information requests targeting Ahnenerbe Iceland manuscript recoveries, consistently return denials, or heavily redacted ethnographic reports omitting any reference to prophetic texts, while Icelandic National Archives maintain deliberate gaps in 1938-1939 foreign researcher inventories. Contemporary runic scholars comparing surviving Eddaic fragments find none exhibiting the confiscated Vellum's layered inscription technique, which aligns disturbingly with emerging holographic data storage principles capable of encoding multiple narratives in single mediums. Why has no Icelandic authority ever publicly pursued repatriation of this specific document when lesser Ahnenerbe seizures, books, artifacts, recordings have been returned since the 1990s? Persistent accounts from retired intelligence personnel place the Icelandic Völuspá prophecy Vellum alongside the Saami drum and crystal skull in controlled environment storage, occasionally consulted during strategic forecasting exercises deemed too sensitive for declassification. The Vellum was not merely confiscated, it was severed from the living tradition of Nordic cedar, its continuing prophecy considered too disruptive for any modern narrative of history to accommodate. In the enforced archival darkness surrounding its existence, the seeress's forbidden voice continues to whisper across the turning of ages. The Irminsul amulet of Karl Maria Viligut, discovered in a small iron strongbox welded shut inside Heinrich Himmler's personal safe at the SS headquarters in Prince Albrechtstrasse, recovered by American Counterintelligence Corps agents during the July 1945 sweep of Berlin's ministerial district, was a heavy silver amulet depicting a stylized Irminsul, the sacred Saxon pillar tree that symbolized the axis of the world in ancient Germanic cosmology. Suspended from a thick chain, forged from an alloy that initial field tests could not immediately identify. This object had belonged to Karl Maria Viligut, the reclusive Austrian mystic known within the SS as Weistor, Himmler's personal occult advisor from 1933 until his forced retirement in 1939 following revelations of his pre-war psychiatric institutionalization. Viligut, claiming direct ancestral memory stretching back to prehistoric Azawana clans who worshipped at the original Irminsul, destroyed by Charlemagne in 772, had presented the amulet to Himmler during a private ceremony at Wewelsburg in 1934, insisting it was the last surviving fragment reforged from the sacred pillar's original metal core, retrieved from the Externstein site in the 17th century by a secret Irminist brotherhood that preserved it through centuries of persecution. The amulet's central pillar, rising between two curved horns, reminiscent of the golden horns of Galahus, was engraved with a continuous spiral of Armanen runes that Wiligut claimed formed an unbroken energy circuit, capable of aligning the wearer with telluric currents flowing through ancient Germanic holy sites. Ahnenerbe metallurgists examining the piece in 1936 detected trace elements of meteoric nickel iron, blended with silver, in ratios suggesting deliberate archaic smelting techniques, while the chain links bore microscopic etchings visible only under magnification, sequences matching Wiligut's private runic system that allegedly encoded genealogical memories of pre-Christian Germanic kings. Himmler, increasingly reliant on Wiligut's visions for SS ritual design, wore the amulet beneath his uniform during critical wartime audiences, reportedly experiencing heightened intuitive clarity regarding strategic decisions, including the timing of the 1940 Norwegian campaign intended to secure supposed Hyperborean remnants. Ritual protocols preserved in captured Wewelsburg orderly books describe the amulet's central placement during quarterly ancestral remembrance ceremonies in the castle's crypt, where 12 Gruppenführer would stand in formation while Wiligut, when still active, or his designated successor intoned reconstructed Asawana invocations. Participants consistently reported shared sensory phenomena, a palpable vibration emanating from the silver pillar, coinciding with sudden drops in ambient temperature, followed by collective visions of vast primordial forests illuminated by perpetual northern light, where towering figures in horned helmets instructed them in forgotten battle formations and runic sciences. One particularly sensitive 1938 memorandum, initialed by Himmler himself, documents a session where the amulet allegedly induced temporary levitation of nearby iron candelabra, an effect witnessed by multiple officers and attributed to reactivation of the Irminsul's world axis resonance under proper solstice alignment. After Viligut's 1939 disgrace, Himmler retained personal custody of the amulet, transferring it between Wewelsburg and Berlin as bombing raids intensified, convinced its protective energies had preserved him through multiple assassination attempts. When CIC agents breached the Prince Albrechtstrasse complex in July 1945, the strongbox containing the amulet was among items flagged for immediate high-priority extraction, separate from standard loot inventories. Initial handling triggered documented anomalies. Several American officers reported persistent metallic ringing in their ears lasting days, while photographic plates stored in the same evidence locker developed radial interference patterns centered on the amulet's silhouette. The object was routed through established esoteric artifact channels to the Maryland Consolidation Facility, where Project Paperclip scientists conducted controlled geomagnetic experiments, recording localized magnetic field inversions when the amulet was positioned at precise compass orientations, matching the X-Turnstein's natural rock alignments. Declassified fragments from early 1950s evaluations describe successful induction of enhanced spatial orientation in test subjects, wearing replica chains during navigation exercises, results quietly incorporated into Cold War survival training, yet sealed indefinitely. Freedom of Information requests targeting Wiligut Personal Effects, 1945 recovery. Consistently returned denials citing ongoing classification, while German post-war investigations into SS property dispositions maintain deliberate omissions regarding any Irminsul-related items. Contemporary geomagnetic surveys of the X-Turnstein continue to register persistent vertical anomalies directly beneath the rock formation's central pillar, anomalies that independent researchers note correlate precisely with the amulet's described spiral rune sequence when mapped three-dimensionally. Why has no mainstream biographical study of Wiligut ever acknowledged the existence of this specific amulet when lesser personal items, rings, medals, correspondence, fill public archives? Persistent intelligence community accounts place the Irminsul amulet of Karl Maria Viligut alongside the Black Sun Medallion and Crystal Skull in restricted access vaults, occasionally consulted during programs exploring geomagnetic influence on human cognition. The amulet was not merely confiscated, it was detached from the living current of Irminist tradition that Wiligut claimed to embody. Its capacity to reconnect modern minds with ancestral earth energies deemed too destabilizing for any post-war paradigm to permit. In the enforced separation from its ritual context, the pillar's silent spiral continues to trace forbidden pathways through classified obscurity. The emerald tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, sealed within a vacuum-preserved reliquary of blackened bronze, recovered from the deepest subterranean vault beneath Wewelsburg Castle during the final American push into the region in April 1945, was a thin rectangular slab of translucent emerald green stone no larger than a man's hand, its surface etched with Phoenician-like characters that shimmered with an internal light, visible only in complete darkness. This object entered into Heinrich Himmler's most restricted Ahnenerbe catalog as Smaragdine Primordial, had reached the Reich through clandestine channels in 1942, allegedly acquired from a secretive Coptic monastic order in Upper Egypt by an SS expedition operating under archaeological cover during Rommel's North African campaign. Intercepted field reports from the expedition's occult liaison, a former Vienna Rosicrucian named Hermann von Kassel, described the tablet being surrendered by the monastery's guardian abbot. After prolonged negotiation involving threats veiled as scholarly exchange, the monk warning that its wisdom had been concealed since the burning of Alexandria precisely because those who read without purity would birth a new age of iron and fire. The tablet's material defied immediate classification. Spectrographic tests conducted at a secure Reichsforschungsanstalt laboratory near Salzburg in 1943 revealed a crystalline matrix incorporating beryllium and aluminum in ratios unknown to terrestrial emerald deposits, with inclusions of trace thorium that produce faint radioactive emissions sufficient to fog photographic plates over prolonged exposure, yet harmless to direct handlers. The inscriptions, translated collaboratively by Ahnenerbe linguists and Wiligut's remaining circle, corresponded exactly to the legendary emerald tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, the foundational alchemical text containing the complete doctrine of as above, so below, yet included 7 additional lines absent from all medieval Latin or Arabic versions, lines describing a unified field operation, whereby base matter could be transmuted not merely into gold, but into self-sustaining energy vortices capable of bending space and time. Himmler, interpreting these passages as confirmation of Vril and world ice theory convergence, ordered the tablet installed in Wewelsburg's crypt beneath the Black Sun mosaic, positioned so that its internal luminescence aligned with the 12 spokes during winter solstice, creating measurable interference patterns in candlelight that formed fleeting projections of geometric solids upon the vaulted ceiling. High-level ritual descriptions preserved in captured SS adjutant journals detail quarterly ceremonies reserved for the innermost circle. Himmler, select Reichsführer staff, and surviving Vril mediums, where the tablet was placed upon a silk cloth, dyed with alchemical preparations, while participants arranged the previously acquired relics in a precise mandala around it. The Spear of Destiny at north, the Vril Pendant at east, the Crystal Skull at south, the Black Sun Medallion at west, with the Vajra, Lapis, Drum, Vellum, and Irminsul Amulet occupying intermediary positions. The assembled officers would then recite the tablet's extended text in reconstructed Proto-Germanic, while exposing the stone to focused quartz lamp radiation mimicking starlight. Multiple independent testimonies describe resulting phenomena including sudden ozone scent, synchronized participant heart rate entrainment, and collective visions of a unified cosmic mechanism wherein ancient Hyperborean science merged with modern rocketry to enable transcendence of earthly cycles. One particularly guarded 1944 protocol, recovered from Himmler's personal effects, records a session where the tablet's additional lines allegedly manifested as audible harmonic tones, after which strategic decisions regarding Wunderwaffen development, including intensified Peenmunde efforts, were reportedly guided by insights into serpent current manipulation that participants claimed originated beyond human cognition. As Allied forces closed on Wewelsburg, SS custodians evacuated the tablet to the castle's deepest vault in a final attempt at concealment, sealing it within the bronze reliquary alongside microfilm copies of the extended translation. When American troops breached the chamber, the reliquary was recovered intact, its vacuum seal unbroken despite surrounding structural collapse. Initial handling triggered the highest classification yet assigned to the esoteric collection. Photographic documentation produced persistent double exposures showing the additional inscriptions, even when not visible to observers, while several intelligence officers reported recurring dreams of vast desert libraries burning and a voice intoning operational principles that later correlated eerily with post-war nuclear and aerospace breakthroughs. The tablet completed the Maryland facility's assemblage of confiscated relics, where Project Paperclip scientists, now augmented by absorbed Ahnenerbe specialists, conducted unified field experiments positioning all 10 artifacts in the ritual mandala configuration under controlled conditions, reportedly achieving transient anti-gravity effects and electromagnetic anomalies that quietly informed subsequent black-budget propulsion research, yet vanished entirely from official documentation. Declassified fragments from late 1940s technical summaries describe measurable coherence between the relics when arranged around the tablet, producing energy signatures that defied classical physics and aligned disturbingly with theoretical unified field models pursued decades later in open science. Results sealed under classifications that persist despite repeated archival challenges. Freedom of Information requests targeting North African Ahnenerbe recoveries 1942, or Wewelsburg vault primaries uniformly return complete denials or referrals to non-existent files, while Egyptian authorities have never acknowledged any missing artifact matching the tablet's description, despite detailed Coptic records of a green stone of thrice great wisdom, safeguarded since late antiquity. Contemporary materials analysis of known medieval emerald artifacts reveals none exhibiting the confiscated specimen's isotopic signature or self-luminescence, properties that independent researchers note parallel modern metamaterial developments, capable of manipulating electromagnetic fields at quantum scales. Why has no post-war investigation, German, American, or international, ever publicly corroborated the existence of this complete tablet when fragments of lesser Ahnenerbe acquisitions fill museum displays worldwide? Persistent accounts from retired Wright-Patterson and successor facility personnel describe the 10 artifacts maintained together in a single, climate-controlled chamber, occasionally activated in configurations that continue to yield insights too paradigm-shifting for declassification. The Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus was not merely the final piece confiscated from Hitler's vault. It was the capstone intended to unify them all, its forbidden extensions holding keys to operational mastery over reality itself. In its continuing enforced isolation, surrounded by the sister relics whose stories have now been traced, the tablet's emerald glow remains the most deeply buried secret of the post-war era, ensuring that the alchemical great work begun under the sign of the Black Sun was not ended in 1945, but merely transferred to new guardians operating in permanent shadow.